So yeah, we are now recording and I think we're good to go.
Excellent. Thanks a lot for that. So hello everybody. I'm Linda Moss. I'm the clinical midwife advisor for the programme, for the cord blood programme, and I'm here to talk about everything cord blood. Hopefully the talk will cover why it's used, and why is it important, how it's collected, and who ends up getting cord blood, and what's the future for cord. So next slide, please.
Just before Linda continues, we do have the question and answer function in Zoom. So if you've got any questions throughout the session, feel free to just submit your questions and we'll answer them all at the end. So go for it, Linda.
So just get me on my second slide, please.
Oh, can you not see? I'm on the second slide. Am I not showing?
Yet.
Okay, let me just stop the share. Sometimes PowerPoint is a funny thing where it presents one version of it. So let's try that again.
And it wasn't, I couldn't see the slide, I couldn't see the slide mode, I could see the, you know.
Yeah. So can you see cord blood program now?
Not as the main thing, no.
So I'm now on slide what is umbilical cord blood.
Nothing's moving from my, oh hang on, what's this? No.
Nope.
No.
Oh, okay. Let's see why that is. Sorry guys, we almost had it. Let's try sharing this one. What can you see now? What is umbilical cord blood, Linda?
Yes, I can now. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, and if I yeah, I click back. Can you see cord blood program?
Yes,
okay.
Yeah, lovely. So,
all right.
a very quick thing then. So, thank my colleague, Dr. Roger Horton, who is our lead cord specialist, because he's helped me update these slides really. So I just wanted to say that about that bit. And then moving on to the next slide, about, first of all, let's make sure we're all on the same page talking about, so that we know we're all talking about what is umbilical cord blood. And basically, it's the blood that's left in the placenta and cord after the baby's born and after the placenta is delivered and the baby's been separated from it. So it's, although we call it cord blood, actually it's all the blood that's in the placenta as well. And it's the baby's blood, because the baby, as you can see in the womb, is it's attached to the cord and placenta, and the blood circulates around all three parts of it. So we've got also a diagrammatic view of the cord itself, and you'll see there's one big vein and two arteries, and generally speaking we collect from the vein because that's the biggest vessel, but we do get what we can out of the arteries as well. So hopefully that explains that. So why do we do cord blood banking when we've got a way of collecting stem cells from adults? And yes, there are a number of adult donor registries around the world, and they, as you know, designed to facilitate location transport for patients. But despite the number of adult donors, you can't always get a match in time, particularly people with rarer HLA types, tissue types, or particularly people from Black and ethnic minorities, because the bone marrow register is underrepresented with people from Black and minority ethnic areas. So cord blood works in a complementary manner to the adult programme to fill in those gaps in the existing facilities. Next slide, please. So there are public cord blood banks all around the world, and around about 700,000 are available for transplants around the world and growing. And if you are, or one of your family needs a cord blood transplant, your consultant will be looking at the cords that are banked all around the world for the best match. It's about 8 to 16% of global transplants per year, but it's not that much, but it's about 3,200 procedures a year. So although it will never take over from the adult registers, it's a really important resource for those that can't find an adult donor, or particularly for urgent cases. So the next slide will explain a bit more. Actually, before that, that's just really just give you an idea of the stem cell provision worldwide and how it's grown over the years. And the grey bit at the top is the cord blood units. The red bits, can't see this. Yeah, I can't see that. There's the apheresis, and the marrow is the blue bit. The all of this is about for unrelated donations, because of course if anybody needs a transplant, they will go for the relative first as a better match. But cord blood in public banks is about unrelated matches. You'll see that after an initial rise in the use of cord blood in the around 20, in its peak about 2010, 2011, the use of cord blood has gone off a little bit. The numbers have gone down slightly. However, last year we saw an increase in usage, and that was before this year, where we've already seen another increase with because of the COVID issues. Generally speaking, around, as we said before, about 3,000 cord blood units shipped annually, and 40% of those have got 2 mismatches, because cord blood is a little bit different to adults. So keep moving on to the next slide, please. The advantages of cord blood is you can get a greater degree of mismatch for a successful cord blood transplant than with adult stem cells. And as little as a 6 out of 8 match can give a success rate the equivalent as a 7 out of 8 match in an adult unrelated donor, if the cell dose is equivalent. So that's a fantastic advantage for cord. Also, by tissue typing the donating mothers, it's possible to understand the non-inherited maternal antigens the cord's been exposed to, because of course the cord blood will have a tissue type which is a mixture of the mother and the father, but we will know what the mother's tissue type is because we get a blood sample from her as well. So what they do, if there's a slight mismatch, they make sure that mismatch includes some of the mother's HLA type, but tissue types, and it means that cords can be used for an even wider range of patients. Next slide, please. Also with cord blood, there's a much lower incidence of both acute and chronic graft versus host disease. And certainly somebody who has received a cord blood transplant, who I know in Leicester, who's an Asian man, he's probably about 5-6 years from his transplant now. And when he goes back to the clinic, all his contemporaries who've had adult stem cells have got significant GVHD symptoms. He has a slight bit of eczema. So he said the cord has been amazing for him. The other thing about cord blood is that once we've collected the cord, it's processed and it's stored frozen. So it's all ready to go, basically. So if someone needs an urgent donation, an urgent transplant, then we can get one to them really quickly. And we have done that. quite early on, actually, there was a very young child who needed an urgent transplant, who was really ill with leukemia, and we got the unit up to them, I think it was up in Newcastle, within 3 days. So, which is brilliant. You could nowhere near organise an adult donation for that. Also, we've got some data emerging that there is a lower rate of CMV reactivation in cord, which is a good advantage. Next slide, please. So you might think, so why the heck, with all these advantages, why isn't cord blood used all the time instead of adults? Well, as you can imagine, we've just got one placenta. And certainly when we started doing cord blood transplants, we thought we could only ever transplant in babies and young children or very small adults. We've got better at doing the collections now, so we can get larger collections, and we can transplant adults now. But we've only got one shot at this. So we can't go back and collect more from the placenta, because once it's done, it's done. They've done cord blood transplants to try and increase the cell dose, but actually it's really very costly to do that. So it tends not to be done so much now. Also, you can't go back to the donor to get a lymphocyte infusion if a bit of a pickup is needed. The other thing that really freaks out the transplanters is the time it takes for the cord transplant to engraft and actually work and start making the new blood. That takes quite a lot longer than with adult stem cell transplants. And so that is it means that a lot of transplanters choose not to use cord because they're not as used to it. It can be overcome by the double transplanters you can see there, and we're also doing a lot of work with transplanters and helping them with education, and that's a lot of the work that the lead core specialist Roger is doing. Next slide, please. So basically, you've got to treat each case as an individual and see what the benefits of a particular graft type to determine which one is the most appropriate. And just going back, when we just had the adult, Anthony Nolan had the adult register, they could see there really was a need for a UK-based cord blood bank, so that we can supply the UK transplant community with a high-quality graft at a cost-effective price for the NHS. Because previously they have been importing cords from America or Europe, which cost a lot more than us. So that's why we started doing cord blood collection in the UK through Anthony Nolan, and we built this therapy centre in Nottingham where all the processing started. Next slide, please. There's a picture of it. It's in the grounds of Nottingham Trent University, the Clifton campus, for those of you who might be wondering. And there was some funding provided by the East Midlands Development Agency at the time, and that was built in 2007. Next slide, please. We actually started collecting, the programme started collecting in 2008, and we've built up now so that we've got 5 fixed collection sites. 2 in Leicester, 2 in Manchester, and 1 in London at King's College Hospital. We can process 8 clinical units a day. We've got nearly 10,000 units in the register, searchable for transplant. And we've so far, probably it gets out of date as soon as we put it on paper, 233 cord blood units have been shipped for transplants. That's 233 people who've had a chance of life because of our programme, which is amazing. And just gives you an idea of the members of staff, the collection site and processing facility. There's quite a few of us altogether, just under 50 people. So it takes quite a lot of staff to work a cord blood bank, and as always, it makes it quite an expensive thing. of those people, as many of us as possible are working remotely to minimise numbers, both at the processing facility so that we can distance possibly there, and also in the collection sites, which are based in the maternity units. Next slide, please. The model of collection we have is we have dedicated collecting staff who are fully integrated into the hospital maternity team at each site, and there's myself and another clinical midwife advisor who support the whole programme. At the moment, we're collecting from Sunday to Thursday because the CTC is processing Monday to Friday. We encounter around 22,000 mothers a year, and we collect around 6,000 cord donations, about 500 a month. Next slide, please. So what we do is we collect following the standards, the quality standards set by the Human Tissue Authority and an international accreditation, which is the foundation of the accreditation of cord therapy quality standards. So it's FACT is an international quality assurance thing. So we have a lot of standards we have to work by. So the first thing that is very important is that women need to be properly informed and they're able to make an informed decision, so we have informed consent. So all that process takes place through our collection staff. Next slide, please. The collection itself happens on a modified trolley, which, as you can see, is a normal sort of trolley with drawers in. You can buy anywhere really, but we have a stand at one end with a holder in it, and we use, it looks like you can see there's a picture, lovely picture of a placenta there for those who've not seen placenta before. It's actually in a kidney bowl, which is how we get it from the maternity staff. And we put it into our own disposable bowl, which is actually a vomit bowl, disposable vomit bowl with a bit cut out so that the cord can then hang down. So if you look at the next slide, you can see the cord hangs down from the bowl, and the collector can then commence the collection itself. The collection is done under aseptic technique. We have to wear all the right PPE, as you can imagine, and we, as part of this technique, clean the cord with a chlorhexidine wipe to limit the amount of any contamination. Next slide, please. We then use a specially designed collection bag with a large needle at one end that's inserted into the umbilical vein. You saw that picture earlier, and the blood comes out via gravity into a bag, which looks a bit like when you donate blood. Next slide, please. Once the collection's complete, it's put into a bag with a little bit of the cord tissue and some blood from the mother, and it's transported daily by couriers from the hospitals to Nottingham. So it just gives you a bit of an idea of how that happens. And next slide, please. It's then received in the cord blood bank in the morning, really. They usually start unpacking things around 8 o'clock. It's accompanied by a lot of paperwork which identifies the mother, it identifies where it's come from, and it has all the paperwork with it, which includes the consent form and also the questionnaire that the mother's completed, telling us about her and her family's medical history. We've already done we've done quite a few screening questions, so we know that what we're sending in is safe to be received by Nottingham. Everything's got to be transported in a temperature recorded manner, because then we can comply with our quality standards. So next slide, please. So when it was received at Nottingham, they then go through a process to get it get it processed. Now, I'm a midwife, so I don't do any of this bit, but basically they have a look at it through one of their machines, which checks whether the cell count is actually high enough for it to be processed. And then if it is, then it goes through this processing thing. And if not, then it could be useful for researchers. So when they will do that sort of analysis at the beginning of the day, and so every day, or most days, cord blood units are sent out to researchers, some of them in the Anthony Nolan Research Institute, and sometimes for researchers that we've got contracts with around the country. And the women are aware that their donation could be used for research. I'll leave that and move on to the next one. The final bag looks like this. Now, that picture makes it look quite large, but actually you can hold it in the palm of your hand. It's tiny. It's about 30 mils. It's 20 mils, it says, in 10% DMSO, and then the little bag next to it, I think, is about another 10 mils. So altogether it's 30 mils, which is nothing, because by the time they've actually spun down the blood itself, they get rid of all the red blood cells and the plasma, and you're just left with the buffy layer, they call it, where the stem cells are. So it's a very small amount that's left, but it's rich in those stem cells. And next one. So this gives you a better idea of the size of it, because once it's all processed, then it's in that little bag, it goes into those cassettes that are then placed into the cryo banks. This is where they're frozen in the special storage area that they have in Nottingham. Next one, please. So at the moment in our tank, we have different grades of units, and they tell us really how many stem cells are in each collection. So the A+ and the A ones are the big ones that can be used for adults as a single cord blood unit. The B grades tend to be for double cord blood transplants or smaller adults. The C grades would be used usually more for children, and the D grades are more for children as well, or possibly as a backup for a double cord blood transplant. We really want to try and keep everything A, B, and C, and as we progress, those are the ones that we're going to be concentrating on increasing the amount in our bank. So the ones that get to be D grade in the future will go more for research as we build up that research portfolio. But the A's and B's and the C's will keep in the bank and try and grow that part of our bank, because we know by experience that they're the ones that tend to be used. Basically, we have about 1/3 of our inventory that is from Black and minority ethnic groups. So we have achieved what we wanted to do there, but you can see we still need to do better. So the other thing we will need to do is also improve the range of ethnicity cord blood units as well, so that we can better serve that community. Next slide, please. If a cord blood unit is selected for transplant, then we set a date and it's packed up in a dry shipper, which looks a bit like a mushroom, and it's couriered to the desired location. It's temperature monitored all the way through, and usually they're shipped about a week before they're required in case of any transport issues. And then once it's safely there, then the patients can start doing their conditioning once they've got their graft safely arrived, so they can carry on with it. But as we said before, we can do it in a much shorter time scale if we need to. Next slide, please. Selected cords. So of our cords that have gone out, slightly more have gone internationally to the UK. Only 46% have been the UK, so it's about half-ish. The very first cord that we ever shipped was to Australia, and it was for a mixed race Aboriginal Filipino patient, and it was matched with a cord blood unit with a Philippine background. That was a really weird one, and it happened so early on. But it was a fantastic start because it showed how we could reach those very rare HLA types. Next slide, please. So you can see what these things are made up of. Of the cords that we ship out internationally, the vast majority go to America. America seem to quite like our cords, which is great. And Netherlands is our next one. And then within the UK, the vast majority have gone to Nottingham, and then next to Royal Marsden and Birmingham. And that tends to be when you've got transplanters who are like a friend of cord. This is where the work of Roger comes in to educate all the other transplanters, and hopefully we can start building up more and more units in the UK that will accept our cords. Next one, please. So what conditions are treated by cord blood transplant? I think I've already indicated some of this, in that the vast majority really is for malignant disease, for acute leukemias. And you've got typically two different sorts of patients. Those that are very young, the less than 5 years, that need early treatment or those of over 50 that develop the disease in later life. So that seems to be the mixture. Of the non-malignant disease, it tends to be pediatric patients with inborn errors of metabolism that may need transplant early in life. And it's things like sickle cell, B thalassemia, or other immune deficiencies. Next slide, please. So the demand has increased for high quality cords over time, and this is what this particular slide showed. I actually described this earlier, that now more and more it's the high quality cords that are being used, the A's, the B's, the C's. So that's why we're concentrating on collecting those very high quality ones. Next one, please. So what's the future for cord blood banking? We were looking a bit worried actually about cord blood, because it seemed to be there seemed to be a decrease in its use right around the world since about 2015. But then in 2019, we saw an increase in cord transplants, and this wasn't just in this country, it was all around the world. And I think as transplanters are learning a bit more about the benefits of cord, and this year is highlighted the value of cord again in the pandemic situation, because when everything locked down, it was really difficult to get adults to be able to donate and to move those other sources around. Whereas the stuff that was our cord blood units that were ready to go were used tremendously. And again, it was right around the world that cord blood was really used a lot more over that pandemic period, the lockdown period. It's settled down a bit now, but I think it shows how valuable it is for those emergency situations. And then as science continues to develop, we're learning more and more about cord blood and cord tissue, and we can see it's making a great starting material for cell therapies. And this is another area that as a cord blood bank we are concentrating on, because we can see it can be used for all sorts of things like healing wounds, for grafting if there's been heart transplants. It's heart attacks. It can graft tissue into it can grow tissue that can be grafted into an injured organ, which is amazing. They're using it for cartilage as well. So there's a lot of stuff that's been done on that area. Again, it's so much, it's untrue. So I think there's a great deal of a future for cord blood banking. We're not going to go anywhere soon. It's something that's very much needed and is a great thing for Anthony Nolan to be investing in. Next slide, please. So in summary, it's vital to fill the gaps that adult registries can't, but use a good effect. It's always worth considering the use of cord for any potential transplant, and it'll play an important part in the advancement and acceleration of scientific developments through cell and gene therapy. And hopefully this will go along to save and improve lives of patients all over the world. Thank you. I think that's it. If anyone's got any questions, and I can just go into that. So moving straight into the questions, the question was, would any pregnant women have the opportunity to donate cord blood, or would you need to be a specific hospital? And yes, we only collect cord blood in Anthony Nolan in those 5 hospitals. The NHS have got about 6 hospitals where they do cord blood collections. Otherwise, in other maternity units, then women are not able to donate cord blood to a public bank. It isn't possible to do. We can only be in specific hospitals because it's very expensive to have a cord blood unit and have all those staff that have to be specifically trained and to have all the quality standards complied with. So we in Anthony Nolan choose hospitals with lots of births and with great diversity of ethnicities, and we collect intensively so that we can make the most of where we are, so that as a charity we are cost effective. Hopefully that answers that question. Are there any other questions?
I have a question. So something I know I've come across when I've been when I talk about it sort of in the public is there is sometimes pregnant women have concerns about like premature clamping. Would you be able to explain sort of what that is and kind of say yeah.
There's a big discussion about delayed clamping of the cord after the baby's born, and historically, really since the 70s, I suppose, the midwives and doctors have been doing immediate clamping of the cord after the baby's born. However, over time, when there was no scientific reason why they should do that, and over time they could see that, particularly for premature babies, but also for to a degree for those babies at term, it was beneficial that once the baby's born, to not clamp immediately, but to actually leave it for a while, so that the baby, as we saw before, the blood circulates around the baby and the cord and the placenta, so there's a little bit more blood goes into the baby before the cord is clamped and cut. Immediate clamping is really good for cord blood collection. For those of us who do collections after the placenta is delivered, and that's the best way that we can get the most blood that way. However, we acknowledge that it's good for the baby to have a delay. This is what the science is telling us. We also know that most of that transfusion back into the baby takes place within 60 seconds. It's about 85% of it. So what we recommend, and in fact cord blood programs all around the world is recommend this, that if the cord clamping is delayed by 1 minute, then the baby gets the benefit and we can still collect successfully from that placenta. Hopefully that answers it.
Yeah, no, that was a great answer. Thanks for that. So we've got another question in the Q&A.
Yeah. Let me just, are there any factors that make a mother a better, worse choice for donation? Well, first of all, we only collect after the baby is at term. So we don't collect from premature babies. That's the first thing. It's fairly similar to when adults donate to the adult program in that we have a screening system so that anybody who's got HIV or any other bloodborne disease, or a lifestyle history that could be considered to be risky in some way, such as a sex worker in the past, then they wouldn't be able to donate. That would be screened out of our system. There are other things that we have a 4-page questionnaire, so there's quite a few different things. One thing which is quite commonly come across is, as well as things like HIV or Hep B positive women, is also people who've had a blood transfusion in the past, and that's because of the history of CJD in this country. So we screen those people out as well. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
I think there was one in the chat.
Yes.
Explain the process for the mother a bit more. Does she give blood during her pregnancy as well, and what's it like for her? Right, okay, what it's like for the mother. Basically, what we do is we ask the community midwives in the hospitals where we're based to give out our consent leaflets, which explains the programme to the women, usually around the time that they're booking to have their baby. So it's one of the leaflets they receive. So there's like an introduction. This is what you can do. They can then sign up like an intention to register with us, really, like a pre-consent, either on electronically on their phone or with a bit of paper, which is like a tear-off bit at the end of the leaflet that's posted back to us. So we've got 2 ways of doing that. And really nothing much happens. Some women will arrange to come in to do all their full signing up before they have the baby, but generally they don't bother because they don't come into the hospital particularly. But with that pre-consent, we can collect the cord blood, and then they fill in the paperwork amazingly after they've had their baby. They are brilliant at doing that without complaint, and they also give us a bit of their blood after their donation as well. So we have 3 tubes of their blood that go along with it. They don't really see us. We don't interfere with the care the woman has at all. We don't get in the way of the birth so that her birth experience isn't altered or diminished in any way. And when they have donated, we give them a thank you card, a certificate for the baby, like a little pack. There's a thank you. There's like a t-shirt for the baby and things like that. And the women are so enthusiastic about donating. They really want to help us. They really want to donate and to feel that as well as giving birth, they can help save a life at the same time. It's brilliant, really. Just to go on about all the paperwork, we're actually doing a project at the moment so that the women can sign up electronically as well with all the paperwork. So hopefully, as we move forward, all the consent and the screening paperwork can be done electronically, hopefully before they come in, which should make it a bit easier for the women who are those heroes at the moment.
Yeah, all the little baby grows are really, really cute.
They are.
Yeah. Saying thank you for that answer. So, we've just got another question in the Q&A.
Yeah.
Do you want me to read it for you, Linda? Can you see it?
I'm just trying to get. There we go.
Yeah.
I couldn't get out of chat.
Yeah.
Do people who donate cord blood get to communicate with us? No, they don't get to communicate with the recipient. There is no communication. Sometimes we tell them right at the beginning that we don't do that communication, and it's a bit awkward really, because the cord blood is the baby's blood, not the mother, but the mother is the only one who can give the consent at the time. So it's not something that is done, and I don't think that's done all around the world. I think it's, I don't know, it's maybe a quality thing that they don't do that. However, often the women come back to us and say, hey, what happened to my cord blood? And we do tell them. We will tell them whether it was successful, the collection, because sometimes we don't use it at all. Sometimes it goes for research, and sometimes it's put in our bank, and that's what we tell them. So they get to know that it was of a quality grade or not. So hopefully that answers that question.
Give it a few more seconds. I actually have another question, if that's okay. Can a woman donate multiple times if they have multiple babies?
Yeah, yes, definitely. I think we've had people coming back with their fourth baby.
Oh, wow.
We've certainly had many women who donated 2 or 3 times. Lots of them. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And they really, they're proud, of each one having their certificate, etc.
Yeah. Okie dokie. Well, I will stop the screen recording now, just in case someone is waiting until we are stopping recording to ask a question. So just go.